Hey guys, this is my latest review of HBO's Lovecraft Country. Sorry this is a little late this week, but this is episode 5 of the first season and it is called Strange Case. So halfway through now, the first season. Remains to be seen if we get a second season. Based on the quality so far, I certainly hope so. But I think it's fair to say this show keeps changing the question, or keeps changing the dialogue, because this was a totally unexpected episode. The direction it took, because it shifts the focus actually more on Ruby. Her plot takes up the majority of this episode, which you just wouldn't expect. Like the plots with Yeti and Atticus and also Montrose, they are you get some meaty stuff with them, but they become like secondary plots in this episode, which is a really bold move actually, and I have no issues with it personally. Obviously with Ruby last week, I was kind of wondering what are they going to do with her? Where is this plot going? We saw her obviously very down about the stuff with her sister. She went out and got drunk. She obviously had been to like the kind of all white department store, and she spoke to the sales assistant who was African American, but then Ruby later on was being very jaded, cynical, basically saying, well, they're not going to hire more than one black person. So she was talking about the prospects of her being hired, and she went out and got drunk, and she was saying all this to William, who came on and was turning on the charm, and basically Ruby was venting, and we got what I called like a HBO style love scene when they went back to their house and they were really going at it, or to his house. And again, it left me wondering, well, where is this going? And I never would have guessed basically that this was kind of out of left field, but really brilliant. It totally pays off what they set up with Ruby from the previous episode. And what they do, I think, is I would describe it as almost like a Twilight Zone type episode, a high concept Twilight Zone sort of plot, where William, using like some of his like father's like teachings and science, basically puts this spell on Ruby where she actually gets to live in a white woman's skin, and not just any white woman, but a very well regarded white woman, a rich woman who has a good reputation around town. And the actress I've seen in plenty of other stuff. She was in The Douche. She was also in Jessica Jones. So really good actress. I've seen her in a lot of stuff. She plays like the white character, the woman who's Ruby gets to be in her skin. And it's all triggered by Ruby having this complaint, this question, talking about what it would be like to live in a white person's skin, to have that kind of privilege. So we then get this shot of her walking around town in this new skin, and it's played as a big dramatic reveal because it just cuts to her walking around. It's sort of like, I think there's a short scene with her in the bedroom with William, and then it just cuts to like this flashy kind of musical montage, her walking around town in this other skin. Really kind of hyper hypnotic sort of music, very sort of strange, but again I think they really nail musical choice in this. It really fits the sequence very well. And yeah, they just run with this premise. It's very, very good. It really gives Ruby as a character a lot of stuff to wrestle with, because obviously for part of the episode at least she's really enjoying the freedom she's being given in this new sort of skin, this new life, the opportunities and almost the power. And it does become like kind of a wrestling thing with her, where at times she's kind of having to remind herself who she actually is and where she's come from, and sort of force herself to like question some of her choices, or is this really right to accept this? And various situations come up. The first big one is that she obviously has to come to the aid of a black boy, because kind of, cops being racist once again, because he comes near her, the boy, and the cops immediately jump on this and say, get away from her, you are you being attacked by this boy? And I think they describe him as like an animal at one point. And Ruby, like momentarily, because she's so shocked at this, and the fact that she's inadvertently caused them going after the boy, and I think they do strike him a few times. So at first she's like really shocked and repulsed, so she almost doesn't do anything, but then she obviously realizes and comes to his aid and tells the policeman, no, he didn't do anything. And which is an interesting act in itself. It's obviously the right thing to do, but what I mean by that is she's put in this position of power where she can actually stand up for a black boy, whereas if she was in her own skin, she wouldn't be able to do that. She would be sort of at the mercy of like these racist white cops. So it's this brilliant sort of turning of the tables, and they're immediately like sucking up to her because of who she is and her position in the local town, and they give her a lift home and what have you. And we see this conversation with her and William. Now, I think you could maybe make the argument that Ruby would be so weirded out by this, and because William essentially tricked her, you would maybe assume she would be mad and would back out and not want this. But obviously for the purposes of the episode, you kind of go with it, I think. And I think there's enough kind of ambiguity to hook you into what they're doing. And you can certainly see why Ruby would be intrigued by this and want to do this. And just as an experiment, I think there would be like curiosity from anyone. And also, I think, to be fair, William, he does come across as quite sort of charming, and or charming enough anyway, and he makes it clear to Ruby, hey, this is your choice, you can back out at any time, even though I think we know then this guy is kind of shady and you can't really trust it. But he's saying those things to Ruby. She obviously has an attraction to him, which I think is another side to this. It's that sense of having this opportunity and this unknown kind of handsome, charming white guy who's like giving her this opportunity she's never had before. So it is the opportunity and the unknown, the fascination, which is a big drive for her. And she's just given like a chance to do stuff she never had the chance to do before. So the big thing is that she goes back to the department store and she interviews for a job, and the manager is quite taken with her, not surprisingly, and it gets to the point where she just doesn't get any job. She actually gets like a job as an assistant manager because of who she is and status and things like that. So it's this whole like ridiculous sort of farce where she may or may not have any like relevant experience, but because he likes her, because he's drawn to her, that being the manager, he just gets, yeah, it's like, sure, you can be assistant manager, you can work with me, why not? But the next example of like this sort of like struggle and turmoil with Ruby is that she starts, befriending the black woman, like the shop assistant, and she starts taking pity on her and sort of talking to her, and at one point she does get a bit, overbearing with her, but I think in a way which is just quite patronising. I think it's more that way than actually being overly aggressive. It's just more than Ruby is getting seduced by the power and she kind of uses that. So she is taking the shop assistant under her wing and sort of looking out for her, but she's also being quite dominating in and talking down to her quite a lot. And the episode also touches on like liberal sort of racism, I think. So Ruby befriends some of the other women in the shop, and obviously they're from a very different background than Ruby actually is, and she becomes like friends with them, which she kind of enjoys. It's part of the fantasy, but the way they talk about the black shop assistant and her like background and just little comments, it's not like full blown racism, but it's kind of like just casual racism, and they're kind of talking about going to like her side of the street, her neighborhood, and sort of partying, and sort of kind of talking about enjoying like black music and jazz and stuff, and it's just little comments that are sort of just done in quite a patronizing sort of like way, where it's almost like they're taking the black culture and making it their own and using it as a source of like fun or amusement. It just has a patronizing type tone. And I think that's where Ruby starts to feel uncomfortable again. But she's kind of talked into it, kind of talked to, well, why don't we go to her neighbourhood, that being the shop assistants, one night? Why don't we go and party in her side of the street, or her side of town? So that leads to a very interesting like club scene, and this odd sort of feeling of Ruby, feeling out of body, because she is sort of in her element. She is in her side of town, but in this different skin, and she definitely feels uncomfortable around these women and the way they're acting, and some of the kind of like patronizing comments they're making. But at the same time, you can see there's clearly a side of her that's enjoying it. But the other brilliant thing about the episode and this plot, which again plays into just some of the areas that Lovecraft Country dares to go to at the show is Ruby and like metamorphosis and her transformation, because you get these scenes because basically each day the spell only lasts for so long, or it can kind of be a bit hit and miss. So at various times, like Ruby's struggling with it, like she's trying to stay in the skin, or it's getting close to the time when she comes out, and at certain times it's at like an awkward time. Like there's a scene where she's in the office with the manager, and I think it's when she goes for the interview, and she's starting to feel like really uncomfortable, but she has to like rush off to the bathroom and like try to end the interview as quickly but also discreetly as possible. But yeah, it's those scenes where the special effects makeup really outdo themselves. There's a couple of particularly unsettling but really gross and quite brilliant moments like that when Ruby literally sheds her skin. And there's one in the alley late on in the episode which is, oh my god, this is full on, and this is just so insane and just so fleshy and gross, and you get like the white and the black skin kind of merging, her obviously peeling off the white skin, and all sorts of like blood and flesh and just different like innards almost. It's really, really, oh my god, this is so unsettling, this is so insane, but it's brilliantly done, and you just love those moments. You love that this show dares to go that way. The fact that obviously there's this really interesting idea going, there's this interesting plot, there's this meaty sort of character stuff going on with Ruby, but then it goes full blown kind of body swap horror movie, B movie type thing with these more gross, unsettling sort of scenes. And the other like kind of big stuff happening when they go to the other part of town with Ruby in Skin is that she actually sees that the boss, I think his name's Paul, was only actually doing this because, or he only hired the shop assistant originally because he was attracted to her. And he's a real creep, which you can tell quite early on anyway. He goes after the shop assistant and tries to rape her. Actually, it's really unsettling, and Ruby sees this. So this is when she has an idea. Right, it's time to turn the tables, and it's almost like the eureka moment where she decides, well, if I'm going to stay in this skin and still do this stuff, I've got to do something important. I've got to actually use it to good effect. So it does become something which this show has done so well so far, is the way you have these empowering sort of moments for the characters. And I mean, to be honest, they do take this to a really extreme level, which is very unsettling, even though the guy's like a real scumbag and probably in some ways does deserve it. It's a very uneasy scene to watch, because basically she turns the tables on him sexually in like the next scene. She's with him in the office, and she actually says, I'm gonna quit. And the reason she gives is that she's like attracted to him, and so as assistant manager she doesn't feel she can be with him if she's still working there. So that's the reason she gives, and then she starts seducing him, and it goes full on kind of SMM almost sort of stuff, and she ties him up and she's seducing him. He's really into it, but then it's at that point she turns the tables, and she turns it really physical, really violent on him, and just, you know, man, you'll have to watch the episode, but she like attacks him with like stilettos. Man, it's really one. There is something that's perversely satisfying, because this asshole did sort of have it coming, but even so, you will be kind of like repulsed and say, well, you might have gone a little bit far there, Ruby. But I will say there are two scenes in this episode that are kind of like that and kind of go to the extreme. One is definitely the scene in the alley with her shedding skin, and the other is, all the SMN stuff with the guys. But it's really powerful stuff as well. As I said, it's very empowering, and it's those moments that this show does very well. But Ruby also has some interaction with the sister, the sisters, Christina, William's sister, and one of the reveals is that they're basically the same person. That they basically swap in and out, and there was this intrigue because Ruby had never seen like them in the same skin, and then she actually sees like a transformation where it's William. He comes out and he actually transforms into Christina in front of her. And I guess that's like a contrast for Ruby as well, because she's sort of going through a similar thing. Not in the exact same way, but quite similar anyway. And yeah, so that's revealed, and Christina kind of says, well, my family's got big plans for you and stuff, and we're not quite sure what that is at this point. It might be more to do with getting to like Letty sort of thing, and that they would have a way in with the sister. But we find out then it is Christina who's the driving force, if you like. She is like the main sort of person, and that is more William is like another side of her, if you like the male side. But there you have it. There's that stuff, and Christina I do like as a character. I like the actress, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And I can see some meaty stuff coming out of like the exchanges with Ruby. And there's another sort of gross out scene where Ruby is asked by William, and this is kind of the thing about her having this new life, this new skin, or at least that is. He says, well, just one condition, I need you to do me this favour, and the favour is that she is like a maid at like this policeman style party. Of course we know the family has like connection to local police, and she's asked basically to plant like a device, like a bug, in like the closet, I think it is, or at least somewhere in the room, so that they can overhear what the police are saying. And at one point she has to hide in the closet, and it's another really sort of quite icky sort of scene, because she's in there with this guy who's been like strung up, and he's all sort of like bruised and bloodied, and he's swinging about the closet, and she's like really repulsed by it and trying to control him so that he doesn't like give her away, sort of thing. But she plants the bug successfully. And yeah, I think that's another thing, because it's William who asks her to do that. But we know about Christina's issues with the police and stuff, so it actually makes sense, that sort of detail. But yeah, I have to say everything they did with Ruby in this episode I thought was really brilliant, and I'm enjoying her character as well. So I'll switch to the other side of the plot, and you've got Atticus and Yeti, Letitia, and also Montrose. And obviously, kind of dark ending from last week was then Montrose killed the woman who they rescued, and they were hoping she would help them like decode the spell and everything and the pages. And Montrose, for some reason, didn't seem to want that, didn't trust her, or didn't want her to code the thing, and he killed her. And we don't really find out why in this episode, but Atticus comes back with Yeti, and Montrose claims that she's gone, basically, that she just left, and that the pages have gone with her and stuff. Atticus basically flies off the handle. He goes after Montrose, he chokes him out. It's really kind of hyper masculine, and Yeti has to step in and calm him down, and then Montrose like leaves. And there's this point brought up later when Yeti asks Atticus, hey, if I hadn't have stepped in, would you have killed him? And we don't get an answer really from Atticus. There's like this dramatic pause, and I think the pause and stuff and the doubt hanging in the air really added something to the drama, and it just gets across this idea that Atticus is really kind of strung out at this point, and really conflicted, and this stuff has really gotten to him. So, and I think it is playing with him wrestling between these two sides of his like persona almost, or his character, a bit like what was happening with Ruby, or even Christina and William. So actually, like, the double life thing kind of runs through this episode. But obviously the thing Atticus was concerned about was saving the pages, and he's like frantically asking Yeti, hey, did you photocopy the pages? Did you copy them before they supposedly like went or were burnt, whatever the case was? And she said she photocopied them, and they'll just take a bit of time to develop. She reassures him, and we get like this tender sort of love scene between them where she like calms him down, and they actually sleep together, and as I said, it's a lot more tender and romantic than before than before the first scene, which really wouldn't be hard. But there's some good stuff with Yeti and Atticus again in this episode, of them investigating the page into it and stuff, and again their relationship really is very engaging, and Atticus slowly gets closer to the truth. He basically is pointed in the direction of Montrose's mistress, the Japanese woman who he spoke to over the phone in the episode, and he talks to her again here, and he's kind of saying, well, what is he? What did you do, sort of thing. And she like doesn't give him much of an, much of an answer. He asks her, well, what are you? And she doesn't really respond, and she's very like secretive and almost sort of warning him about getting involved. But it cuts to like a shot of the pages which they've like decoded, and it's almost got this like almost saying die sort of thing on the page. So really like dramatic stuff. But there's obviously a key part of the mystery linked to this woman who Montrose knows. So gonna come back to that obviously. And the stuff with Montrose was also good, some powerful stuff with him. We find out, which we probably suspected, that he is like homosexual. He's been hiding that all these years. We see him go to the guy who is the barman, basically the trans guy. And I'm gonna use the HBO love scene sort of thing, because we again see a very aggressive love scene where Montrose is like having sex with him from behind. But the idea is that it's just like this release of emotion, this release of tension. But it's a very edgy scene again, not just his level of aggression when he's having sex, but it's the sense of it being all pent up and him just releasing this. But it's interesting with Montrose because he is quite a murky character at this point, and we see him later go to like a club with this guy, but with other trans people, and he actually feels very isolated, or that's the impression I get. We see him not really saying much and kind of in the trance, and again it's that out of body type experience. So again, this is all very carefully linked because of Ruby sort of feeling out of body, the stuff with Atticus. So this is a really well crafted show in the way things link up thematically, and I think we see similar stuff with Montrose, where even though he's finally been able to express himself and he is surrounded by people with the same sort of sexuality, even so he still can't settle in. He's still very on edge, very isolated, it seems. So even though there is some breakthrough for him, he still doesn't feel completely at home. So more meaty stuff to come from Montrose by the looks of it. More stuff to explore from his past, and obviously we're still not quite sure why he killed the woman, why he doesn't seem to want these pages to be like translated. So there you have it. Really good stuff again, really meaty stuff. I really like the high concept, as I said, almost like Twilight Zone type stuff with Ruby. I don't know if I like it quite as much as some episodes, but it's really strong again. I can't really pick a fault with it, and it certainly didn't bother me then we spent most of the episode with Ruby. I thought that was a really bold choice and something which didn't bother me at all. I thought it was really worth spending the time with her. So some great stuff with Ruby, and yeah, there you have it. This show once again excelling, being really fantastic in pretty much everything it's doing. So that's episode 5 of Lovecraft Country. Again, sorry this was late. I will return soon with episode 6. and let me know what you thought of episode 5 in the comments. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel, and keep these sorts of TV reviews going. I've recently started the new Netflix series Ratched. I've done the first episode of that, and there will be more to follow soon. But thanks for listening, and goodbye.